Hey everyone, welcome back to the Roto Grinders Morning Grind podcast. I'm your host, Stevie TPFL. We're presented by FantasyDraft.com. If you haven't checked out FantasyDraft.com yet, make sure you guys give them a check. You know, they got a $15,000 home run here on Friday the 13th, and it doesn't suck. You know, 15 grand in a tournament where there's only 774 people and you can only max out 15 entries. Pretty level playing field for any kind of bankroll. So if you haven't checked them out, head on over there to fantasydraft.com. Use promo code GRINDERS. That way you guys get incentives for a year over on Roto Grinders for Fantasy Draft. And you get a 100% deposit bonus up to $600. So check out fantasydraft.com. I'm a big fan of the site. Won a tournament over there on Monday. So, you know, I'm having good success with the two-pitcher sites. But we're here to talk some baseball. We're here to talk this 14-game slate. And we got our normal Friday guest. I think this is the first time you joined me in a couple of Fridays, but it's Hoop 2410. How you doing, my friend?
Not too bad, not too bad. Yeah, we got a full slate here on Friday. One game kicking off at 2:20 Eastern, I believe it is, the Cubs standard Friday start time. But besides that, full slate, Coors Field. We got a couple decent pitching options that we'll discuss. I think there's some opportunity maybe to save some money at the position, but we'll see. We'll see. This is our raw first take. Kind of lets you guys in on what we're thinking. You know, it's early here, so this is basically the first time I've looked over things. I know it is the same for you. And we were talking before the show. It's kind of when your best thought process is at work. At least it is for me. So, yeah, anxious to hop into it. Deep slate here, 14 games.
Yep. Sorry we missed you guys on Thursday. Took the family over to the beach on Wednesday night. Thought I was going to have internet. Did not have internet. So missed you guys on Thursday. Back today. Like Coop said, we got a 14-game slate. So we're going to jump right into this. It's Chicago White Sox heading to Yankee Stadium. And the first thing I noticed about this slate, Mike, was 5 really good hitters ballparks. We got Yankee Stadium. We have Fenway, we got Texas, Milwaukee, and Coors Field, and I think you can even say Chase. So six really good ballparks, probably 6 out of the top 10 here on this slate. So it's really interesting. Chris Sale against Severino here. Chris Sale, probably the top option on the board here.
Yeah, definitely top option. Just to add on to what you said there about all the really good hitting environments, this is really a really good opportunity for GPP players, obviously, because you know that a lot of the ownership is going to be driven towards Coors Field. But when you have the opportunity to pivot off that game and go to other high-scoring environments, you have potentially a big leg up on your competition. You know, if Coors Field ends 4-3, 5-4, you're in a good spot if you faded it and moved on to one of the other solid hitting environment. So just to add on to what you said, Chris Sale, got to be the top option here, just pitching really well this season. Ballpark, not the greatest. Matchup, not the greatest. So I don't think it's a must-play situation. Yankees are a team that typically work pitchers counts, make the pitchers really work, which makes it difficult for these guys to go deep into games. But it's Chris Sale, one of the best strikeout pitchers in baseball. So definitely the top option.
Yeah, how good has Sale been? 7-0 to start the season, averaging just under a strikeout per inning, almost a half a hit per inning this season. Like Chris Sale has been, a top 5 pitcher to start the season, and this is a good matchup here against the Yankees. We've talked about it a few times this year. Yankees. When we're looking at the Yankees, no big right-handed bats in that lineup with A-Rod even on the DL. Teixeira can go to the right-hand side, but he's much better from the left-handed side. So Yankees a team that strikes out 20% of the time against lefties. They have the 23rd lowest WOBA against lefties. This is a good matchup for Sale. His price tag on FanDuel, $12K. When we're looking at the slate, it's going to be Sale at that $12,000 mark, and then you won't see anybody else over that $10,000 mark. So when you're looking at the slate, I feel like this is a good spot to plug in Sale in your cash game lineup, especially on FanDuel.
Yeah, absolutely. Not really close, not anything close in terms of secondary options. So he's the clear-cut top guy. There's no doubt about it. And obviously, you really don't want many bats against him. There's just such limited upside. He's pitching so well. We'll probably see some righties towards the top for the Yankees. Probably see like Starlin Castro bat second. He's one name, maybe a one-off in a tournament, but that's digging super, super deep. And, just no real upside in going against Chris Sale here.
Yeah, I can't play any Yankees in this game. That's just I'm fully confident fading the Yankees here. I'm hoping Sale pitches 7 innings at least minimum here in this game, so can't take any Yankees. Let's talk some White Sox. So Servino, highly touted a lot last year. He got called up last year. A lot of people talked about this guy, but we continue to see him struggle here, especially with right-handed bats. And when we're looking at the White Sox, we're talking Jose Abreu. We need to make sure Todd Frazier is going to play. I know he's dealing with some type of injury. So Abreu, Frazier, and Adam Eaton instantly stand out to me here.
Yeah, the thing about the White Sox, the price is up on a lot of these guys. So I like to play a little bit more for tournaments. If they're cheaper, I'd have no problem going to them in cash games. But due to the price constraints, I'm targeting these guys more so in tournaments opposed to cash games. And it's the guys you mentioned, and even Adam Eaton. He's lefty, but 3.7K. That's up there. So I like this team as a part of a stack. It gets us exposure to Yankee Stadium, gets us off the Coors Field game a little bit. Should be low owned, so I like this.
Yep, I agree. Let's go on over to Philadelphia, where we got Brandon Finnegan visiting the Phillies and taking on Jeremy Hellickson. What's your thoughts on these two pitchers? When we're looking at the slate, Finnegan has been pretty bad this season, but we know how bad Philadelphia has been against left-handed pitching this season. The second lowest WOBA, and they're striking out 24% of the time. WRC plus under 60. But is Finnegan a guy that you might take a shot on, maybe even on like a tournament?
In tournaments potentially, and then I think more so as an SP2 on a multiple pitcher site. If he's really cheap on a multiple pitcher site, I'd have no issue going there to save some money, get you exposure to some top bats, maybe pair him up with a Chris Sale, which will give you a little more flexibility in the cap. So I think he's interesting. There's no doubt about it. This Phillies offense, I mean, it's pretty weak overall, and that's an obvious statement there.
Yeah, they're pretty weak. I think I'm going to take a shot on Finnegan here, especially like on FanDuel. In tournaments, we were going to want to stack some of these places that we're talking about with so many good, hitting environments on the slate. He's 6K. What do you really need? If he gets you 30 and your bats do what they're supposed to do, then you're sitting good. And Hellickson's a guy that he's been interesting this season. He's had a couple good games this year, but I just don't know if this is the spot that I'm going to target him here against the Reds.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. I mean, Hellickson, he's been up and down. He's had some good starts. He's had some bad starts, a lot of volatility, which I guess makes him somewhat appealing for tournaments. But, I'd be comfortable going somewhere else, take a shot on someone else before I take a shot on him.
Yeah, when we're looking at his stats, we're looking at 330 plus WOBA to lefties and righties dating back to last year. So let's talk some bats here. We'll start with Cincinnati, the visiting team here. Joey Votto, Kozar, Bruce, and Duvall. Duvall's the interesting one for me. People are still not playing him, and he continues to show some power upside.
Yeah, I like all those guys. I'd throw Billy Hamilton in the mix if he's batting second. Just so much upside. It's just a ton of upside. I know a lot of people that play cash games are hesitant to play him because he struggles to get on base at times. But if he gets on base, the upside is just massive. So I like him in all formats. And this is a good offense to attack. On the road here, Philadelphia is a fine hitting environment. Facing a pitcher who I think is well below average. I mean, I don't like Hellickson at all. So I like all the guys you mentioned. I mean, it's a good offense to get exposure to, and you can get some cheapies. I mean, the outfielders we mentioned are relatively fairly priced. Votto is under 4K. Bruce is 3.6. That's a fair price tag on him. So it's a good offense to attack. Yeah,
we mentioned that Finnegan might be an option, but if you're not playing him, I feel like we could take some shots at him here. I like Franco and I like Rupp.
It's the same story here with the Phillies. I mean, every time I'm on here, I mean, it's a night in and night out. I just think Franco is a really good one-off tournament option, the lineup filler in your tournaments, and even in this matchup, definitely cash game playable as well. Relatively cheap around the industry, and he has some massive upside. There's just no doubt about it.
Yep. Anything else you're going to mention here before we move on?
No, I think that about sums it up.
Detroit at Baltimore, Chris Tillman, Justin Verlander, and hopefully Verlander can just pitch like Mike Pelfrey like he did last time.
Jeez. I'm still holding out hope.
We started recording the podcast, and it was the fifth inning, and Pelfrey had only given up 2 hits.
Yeah, not good when you stack the Orioles in cash games. That's not a winning combination.
All right, so let's talk Verlander and Tillman here.
Yeah, interesting. Verlander really sharp in his last outing against Texas, went the 7 innings, 9 strikeouts, and he's been good in 4 out of 5 starts. So interesting. But the matchup, I don't think I can pull the trigger on. This is a really good offense. They have a lot of explosive bats: Trumbo, Chris Davis, Machado, Adam Jones heating up. Believe it or not. So gonna pass on both these guys. I mean, I guess maybe some tournament upside in Verlander. Like I said, he's been very good in 4 out of 5 starts. So maybe a little bit of tournament upside. Definitely no cash game upside. Tillman, he's been good as well. He's been actually really good, but gonna pass on him in this environment in Baltimore.
Yeah, when we're looking at Tillman, he's a guy that we want to target right-handed bats, and he's going to face a lot of right-handed bats here with Detroit. So I feel like that's the instant downgrade. And I feel like Verlander is one of 2 guys. He either goes out and pitches a really good game, or he goes out and struggles. And when we're looking at DFS, we're going to want to stack some bats in this game. They opened at an 8.5 total in this game. That it pretty much is, Vegas agreeing with what we're saying here. They're thinking there's going to be some runs. So let's talk about the visiting Tigers bats first. Who do you like here against Tillman?
I'd try to take advantage of some price points, to be honest with you, because these pitchers have flashed some solid performances lately. So I don't want to go too overboard. It is a high total, like you said, 8.5, but I could definitely see this being a low scoring game. Do like some of the best. So the one name that stands out is obviously Adam Jones. He's still 2.6K, and he's been hitting really well as of late. So don't mind him at 2.6K, probably my favorite option. Chris Davis is another guy I'd consider fairly priced, basically all around the industry. Justin Upton kind of got the demotion, batting 6th tonight. So if that's a thing that's going to continue, not much interest in him. So for me, probably my favorite play is Adam Jones, where he's pretty cheap.
Okay, a lot of fair points there. For Detroit, I want to target the power righties like JD Martinez, Miguel Cabrera, even Nick Castellanos. He's shown a lot at the plate this year. Wouldn't be shocked if he gets popped for steroids at some point. Victor Martinez is a pretty cheap option at catcher. And then, like you said, take advantage of some of the price points. But in tournaments, man, Machado, Davis, Trumbo stack, there's a lot of upside there. If Verlander gets hit up, it's probably going to be those 3 guys.
Yeah, and it's like we kind of mentioned with Markel Franco. It's like every night you can go ahead and say, he's a good tournament option. The Baltimore Orioles, for the most part, are a good tournament stack almost every night, unless they're facing an elite pitcher, because they just all those guys have so much upside, specifically Machado, Chris Davis, and Trumbo, just a ton of upside there. So if these guys aren't facing an elite pitcher, I have no issue stacking these guys up in tournaments. The upside is just so massive.
Miami heading to Washington to take on the Nationals, and Gio Gonzalez, Tom Kohler. When we think of Miami, we think of a team that can go very right-handed heavy and they have a lot of good platoon players in this lineup. But when we look at the stats, really high strikeout rate against righties, but they're solid WRC plus and Team WOBA. Gio Gonzalez, a tournament option here?
Yeah, I think he is. I mean, he's actually pitched pretty well, with the exception of the last outing against the Cubs this season. He's been extremely consistent. He's gone at least 5 innings every game. He was flashing some nice strikeout upside, and that's come crashing down to earth in his last couple starts. But those were starts against the Royals and the Cubs. I think he's a fine option here at home. Pretty decent favorite. Don't have the number in front of me here. Actually, where's he sitting? So -160. It's a decent number. Price pretty cheap. I mean, it's a big difference, obviously, between him and Chris Sale. So I have some slight interest in Gio, probably more so in tournaments, though, as you said.
Yeah, just because I feel like the Marlins are a sneaky good team against left-handed pitching, and just because I like Gio in tournaments doesn't mean I'm going to target some Miami bats, and that's how I kind of feel. If you're playing one single team, you got to kind of decide if you want to If you want to take Gio, then you're fading the righties from the Marlins. If you're not taking Gio, you can pick on some of the bats here. And we'll start with Miami here. Stanton's obviously the top hitter on this offense because he gets a lefty. But is there any of these righties that you like here?
Prado's been serviceable. I think he's an interesting option. Obviously, better where he's cheap on FanDuel. He's 3.1K. That's a fair price. I wouldn't have problem going there. Not a situation where I'm going to build around a lot of these guys. More so, if they fit, I'm good with it. If the catcher leads off, Real Muto, I think he would be a fine option. He has led off against left-handed pitching on a few occasions. So interested in these guys, not necessarily building around them.
Yep, I'm the same way. Now, Tom Kohler's a guy I feel like you can definitely target here with the national bats. When we're looking at left-handed pitching or left-handed bats here, Kohler struggles a lot with the home run to fly ball ratio. He struggles a lot with hard contact to lefties. So Bryce Harper, Daniel Murphy, two guys that really stand out to me on the slate.
Yeah, stand out a ton, and especially on sites that don't really adjust based on matchups. I mean, Bryce Harper is about as cheap as he's going to be all season long. On FanDuel, he's 4.3K. Take advantage of that in this matchup. Daniel Murphy priced up a little bit for the most part around the industry because he's been so blazing hot. So I love Murphy in tournaments. I'd have no problem stacking up the Nationals. I'd have no problem playing these guys as one-offs in tournaments either. So it's a really good offense to attack at home here against Kohler. And another name to mention would be Ben Revere back in that leadoff spot. You could probably get him for cheap in most spots. So a really good play there.
Yep, I like the Revere call. Not going to target too many of the righties. Kohler's been serviceable against righties. Really struggles against lefties, serviceable against righties. We have a 14-game slate. Not going to pick on him too much with righties here. Love Harper. Love his price on FanDuel. Take advantage of it. He's probably going to be really popular in cash games, as he should be. Minnesota heading on to Cleveland to take on the Indians. We got Josh Tomlin and Ricky Nolasco. I want to get your thoughts on Tomlin because he's a guy that I've been saying pick on, and he continues to get those little ones next to his name for wins. But I'm going to continue to pick on him here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if people will necessarily play him. Obviously, his numbers look good, especially on FanDuel where the win's so important because he continues to pick up the win. It's not very easy to pick up. Let's see, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight wins. Like, that's not going to continue to happen, obviously. So at some point that's going to end. His numbers, his fantasy points per game are inflated because he continues to pick up the win. So not a guy I can play in any sort of format. Nolasco, absolutely not. So no interest in either of these guys.
Yeah, when we're looking, Tomlin, his Sierra and XFIP both higher than, his ERA. He's allowed a 40% hard contact rate this season. Like, that's not going to continue to allow him to continue to pick up wins. And when we're looking at the slate and we're looking at Tomlin's numbers, I really like Park and Sano in this game. I feel like both of these guys have massive upside here.
Yeah, Sano's pretty cheap around the industry too. So, I mean, that's definitely a price point play. Park is a guy that, people are still warming up to in DFS. So, low owned in all formats. And the price is up there because the guy can, he does have a lot of power. So, I like the call on both those guys. I'd have no problem going Dozier. Mauer, if he's really, really cheap. He's been leading off, and it's not really a tournament play, but I think more of a cash game play. You can get on base and score some runs. If Nunez continues to bat second, I think he's a fine option as well. So, don't buy into the inflated success that Tomlin's had due to picking up the win. You can definitely take some of these Twins bats.
Yeah, Ricky Nolasco dating back to last year, 330 Loba against lefties. Definitely a guy that we can target here with some bats and, even worse against righties with a 345 Woba. So I like some of these Indians, and when I'm looking at the lineup, I like Santana if he continues to hit leadoff. I know he hit 5th in the game last night on Thursday, but if he's in that leadoff spot, I don't mind him. He doesn't give you a lot of home run upside, but it's still there, and he's just so cheap.
Yeah, I'd have no problem going with him. I mean, he's been fine if he's going to lead off. I mean, he does have 5 bombs this season, so I mean that's not too bad. I'd have no problem going there. I think Jason Kipnis is a really good option. If he's priced down anywhere, definitely take advantage of that. Brantley was out of the lineup. He's considered day-to-day. If he's back, I like him a lot. So those are the three main guys. Lindor's kind of priced up a little bit too much for me, so kind of off him. But more so Santana, Kipnis, Brantley are the guys I'm interested in.
Yep, with you on Lindor. I feel like he's starting to get priced out. I agree there. His price across the industry is high. Houston heading on to Fenway to take on the Red Sox. This is the one game, we're recording the night before, but I always like to glance over weather, and the weather looks awful here. Hoping that, we'll see a difference in overnight weather, but pay attention to that. We're going to still analyze the game, but just pay attention to the weather. Houston at Boston. It's Lance McCullers against Stephen Wright. McCullers making his first start of the season for the Astros. He had a rehab start in AAA earlier. I don't know if it was the end of last week, earlier this week, but either way, he's going to be making his first start of the season facing a very, very hot Red Sox team. What's your thoughts on him and Stephen Wright?
Yeah, you definitely can't consider McCullers, and the total in this game opened up at 9. Boston a slight favorite, so Vegas really is not giving either of these guys much credit. Wright he's been shut down all season, so something's got to give. I mean, I think that makes Houston a pretty good tournament stack. People are going to see Wright's numbers and kind of be off him, but the total's still 9, like I said. So Vegas does expect some runs to happen here. Vegas does expect Stephen Wright to regress, and if there's a team that has the ability to begin that regression, the Astros are a team that can definitely do it.
So we'll start it off here with the Astros bats against Wright, who he's a knuckleball guy. If it's working really well, he's going to pitch well. If it's not working really well, he's going to get hit up. So I'm not opposed to maybe taking him on a fantasy draft or a DraftKings as an SP2 in a tournament. Don't know if I'm going to pay that price for him on FanDuel, but I'll take some shots. But I definitely like some of the bats here. He throws a knuckleball. He's a knuckleball guy. So if it's working, it's working. If it's not, it's not. What's your thoughts on some of the Astros bats?
Yeah, so I think Colby Rasmus is one guy that stands out, kind of slumping right now. Prices dropped in a lot of spots, so he stands out, obviously. Altuve might be priced out. I mean, that's a pretty steep price to pay for a second baseman. Facing a guy that's been pretty hot, so most likely off him. Like I said, Rasmus is probably my favorite play. You can probably punt with Preston Tucker, who will likely hit 5th or 6th. So I'll be looking for the cheapies if I'm going to get exposure, but I think they're a fine tournament stack as well.
All right. So what's your thoughts on some Red Sox bats?
Big Papi obviously stands out. He just continues to absolutely mash. Not too expensive anywhere on FanDuel. He's sitting at 4.3K. Super reasonable. This team, like you said, they're just on fire. So, I mean, load up in tournaments. We have Coors Field. We have some other elite hitting environments. People will be off these guys. Well, not off them, but, the ownership level will be a little bit lower than normal. So I like loading up in tournaments and getting exposure in cash games. If you're going to play these guys in cash, just make sure that you're really monitoring the prices. Play the price point game, see if you can get any of these guys at a discount somewhere.
Yeah, if the weather holds off here and this game plays and we don't have any issues, love Travis Shaw in cash games. He continues to mash the ball. Really cheap on fantasy draft. I'm not going to make him one of my fantasy draft plays because I'm really concerned with the weather. Hanley's squaring the ball up right now, and when he's doing that, he's a really good hitter and he hits the ball really hard. And I like you said, David Ortiz, if you can get any of these guys cheap across the industry, it's a 9 total to open. It's going to be a lot of runs here. So like it. Oakland at Tampa, Rich Hill and Jake Odorizzi. Rich Hill, the curveball man. What's your thoughts here against Tampa?
Yeah, it's an interesting spot here. Rich Hill has pitched really well this season, kind of as you alluded to. But the Rays have a lineup that has a lot of guys with a history of hitting left-handed pitching really well. Forsythe, Geyer, Steve Pearce, Souza, just a lot of guys that can, and Longoria, just a ton of guys that can hit left-handed pitching really well. So something has to give. It's a good pitching environment. So I think both are in play, kind of. I mean, I think Rich Hill is somewhat interesting. He has some decent strikeout stuff, and I think the Rays bats are interesting as well in tournaments. And these guys, especially Steve Pearce, it just seems that he hits really good lefties. It's not just like crappy lefties. He's hitting the good ones too. So I think he's super interesting. I like him a lot. Longoria, like I said, has hit lefties well. So I like both sides of this. I like getting some Rich Hill exposure. I like getting some Rays right-handed bats exposure.
Yeah, I like Hill a lot for tournaments, like you mentioned. The Rays can go right-handed heavy. It'll be interesting to see if Forsythe plays. He's been dealing with he got hit by that pitch, missed a game. They said he was available to pinch it late. It'll be interesting to see if he starts, because that's definitely a guy that can hurt Rich Hill. Yeah, I like Rich Hill for tournaments. I don't know if we're gonna play him in cash games. I don't know if this is the spot that you really want to target him in cash with so many different options. I would have liked him a lot on fantasy draft. Sometimes those pitchers are in the $13,000 range, and he's like $19K. He's like third or fourth highest priced pitcher. So I can't recommend him for cash over there. You mentioned a lot here about the Rays, and when we're looking at their price, especially on FanDuel, Geyer, Souza, all these guys, Longoria, even Pearce, they're really cheap. So we can get some of these bats. I don't mind them as one-off plays to, get some value here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't mind, like, if you want to go like Chris Sale and stack these guys up. I mean, if you're going to play Sale, you're going to have to get some cheap stacks. And I think this is one of them that makes Sale viable and makes him, easier to pay out for. So I like pairing those two, Sale with some of these right-handed bats. It's an interesting situation here. Something has to give, obviously. Rich Hill's pitched really well, and the Rays lineup has had a lot of success against left-handed pitching. So interesting matchup here.
Now, what's your thoughts on Odorizzi? I don't like targeting him against the AL East. They've seen him a lot, but he's a guy that I'll target in other matchups, and I feel like this is a good spot to target him in tournaments.
I like him. I like him in tournaments. I like him as a multiple starting pitcher guy. He should be relatively cheap. I don't think he's going to be priced up basically anywhere. Matchup is fine. I mean, the A's, pesky team, but they just don't have a lot of guys that can do damage, especially in this ballpark. It's a pitcher-friendly ballpark. So I have some interest in him, like I said, tournaments and as a SP2.
One guy that I really like for Oakland here in this game is Chris Davis with a K. When Odorizzi struggles and when he struggles with home runs, it's usually against right-handed bats. And Chris Davis has been swinging a hot bat here over the last couple of weeks. I like him a lot. Outside of him, maybe Josh Reddick. He's been hitting the ball well, but outside of those two guys, I don't want nothing to do with Oakland here.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just not much upside. Maybe even like a Josh Reddick if he's cheap somewhere. But for the most part, just off this offense for sure.
Mm-hmm. Toronto at Texas, another good ballpark to target hitters in. And we got R.A. Dickey against Martin Perez. Martin Perez, of course, a lefty going against the Blue Jays in a hitter's ballpark. R.A. Dickey, the knuckleball has not been working this season, and we've been able to pick on him a lot. This is an interesting game. It's another game outside of Coors that I feel like we can load up on.
Yeah, I think this game has, I'm going to make my bold call here, at least 5 more runs in Coors Field.
Okay. Yeah, it opened as a 10 total, so the total's up there.
Yeah, so that's my hot take on this on the podcast here. 5 more runs than Coors Field in this game.
All right, well, let's talk Toronto, the visiting team first. Who do you like?
Everyone.
I kind of got that when you said that you expect this game to score more than Coors.
Yeah, like Donaldson, Bautista, Encarnacion, all in absolutely elite spots here. Martin Perez has really struggled with control, walking a ton of guys. And, if you put guys on base for Donaldson, Bautista, Encarnacion, that just leads to a lot of trouble. So, like all those guys, my favorite, obviously, I think, is Donaldson, a guy who just kills left-handed pitching. Obviously, a very hitter-friendly ballpark here. So all in play. If Pilar leads off, I think he's a fine option as well. Justin Smoke, if he draws a good lineup spot, I'd also have some interest in him. So obviously a huge fan of the Blue Jays tonight.
Well, that leads me to my first play here for fantasy draft that I like that's under 8K. It's Kevin Pillar, 7,500.
Yeah.
He's been leading off against lefties. If he leads off again here, even if he bats in that 5 spot where him and Saunders kind of move around, I like him either way. So Pillar is the first guy that I'm going to target here on fantasy draft that I feel like is underpriced for his matchup. And the second one actually comes from this game as well, but I'll let you lead off here. Who do you like for Texas?
All right, well, let's go through the list here. I like a lot of
everybody.
Prince Fielder is the first guy I'm going to mention. Been absolutely struggling this season. There's no doubt about it. But kind of had a nice game last time out. 2 hits, walk, 2 doubles, a walk, 2 RBIs. Great matchup here against Dickey. So he's the first guy. Mazzara, he'll bat second, basically locked into that 2-hole. I think he's a fine play. Odor, even Adrian Beltre in a righty-righty matchup. Mitch Moreland, I think, is a really, really good tournament option. Gets a poor lineup spot, so that kind of takes him out of cash game consideration, shifts him to tournament consideration. So, really good. I mean, it's Coors away from Coors tonight. Like I said, I think there's more runs scored here, so I like all the bats.
Yeah, second fantasy draft play that's underpriced here for cash games is Mazzara. 6,800, like you said, should be locked into that 2 spot. You made it easy for me there. You mentioned all the bats that I liked. I like Fielder. He's cheap across the industry. Good upside here. If he gets it going, you want to be ahead of the crowd. So I like Fielder a lot. Like Mazzara. Yeah. Like Moreland in tournaments, and Odor is a guy that I feel like he can play in all formats. He's mashing the ball right now. Yeah, and like you said on the Blue Jays side, any of the righties in the top 4, they're all in good plays. Donaldson, probably one of the top plays on the board here on the slate. So love Donaldson, love Texas, love Toronto, but we're going to move on. San Diego at Milwaukee. The problem with doing the podcast the night before, sometimes this happens. At this time right now, we don't know who's going to start for the Padres. Cashner, they said if he does pitch, it's going to be on Saturday, and they don't know who's going to start yet. So it's tough to analyze this game, especially because it's in a hitter's ballpark against a Brewers team that can definitely use some of these guys. So it's tough. If we had to guess, it's probably going to be a AAA guy, right?
I'd assume so. I mean, and probably not in play either way, obviously. I mean, they are facing the Padres, but it's a good hitting environment here, and you have to assume if someone's coming up to pitch, they're going to be on a really short leash and most likely not work deep into the game. So definitely don't want the pitchers here.
So, yeah, Guerrera on the other side of things here, it's the Padres, man. Like, can we really take some Padres bats here? I don't hate it in tournaments, like guys like Will Myers and Kemp who have home run upside.
Yeah, in tournaments, that's fine. Even Brett Wallace, been hitting cleanup, and he has some home run upside as well. So if he's in that 4-hole, but it's more so for tournaments or just complete punts. If you're taking the guy because he's close to the minimum, I'm fine with that. But more so tournaments opposed to cash games here.
Yep, and like we said, we really don't know who's going to start for the Padres, so it's hard to say to take this guy from the Brewers or this guy from the Brewers. More than likely, Braun, Villar, Lucroy, Carter are your 4 targets. Scooter Jeanette's back. He's cheap on FanDuel, so if it's a righty, you can look at him. It's tough to analyze. So if you guys have any questions here about the Brewers or Padres game, once we find out who a starting pitcher is, feel free to send me a tweet, and I'll answer any of those types of questions. It's hard to analyze the game without knowing who's going to pitch. So Atlanta at Kansas City at Kauffman Stadium. We got Volquez against Julio Teheran. I'm going to make a bold call here. Teheran is not going to make it past the 5th inning.
I like that call, obviously. I mean, the A's are a team that really work the count, make pitchers work. Teheran has struggled at times. He's shown some signs of brightness. So, I like that. And, any Royals bats that stand out to you?
Yeah, I like Hosmer a lot here. I don't love Kane, but I feel like he's an option. Perez, Morales, Alex Gordon is the guy that I really like. It's one of these things where he's hitting the ball really well. He comes in with hits in, 7 out of his last 8 games, had a home run at Yankee Stadium on Thursday night. Yeah. He's swinging a hot bat right now. So I love those type of hitters. We have Teheran, who He really struggles against lefties. Highest home run to fly ball ratio on the slate, high WOBA, high hard contact rate. This is a really good spot to target some of these lefties against him, and they're going to be super under-owned on this slate.
Yeah, it's good stack, and they'll be pretty low owned. In terms of the pitchers, I think Volquez is pretty interesting as well. I mean, should be a lock to pick up the win. So I think pretty interesting on FanDuel. The opening line in this game has him favored minus 155, total 7.5. So that's a pretty sizable favorite. And if he has the lead and turns it over to the bullpen, it's a pretty safe bet that the bullpen will indeed hold the lead. So I think Volquez is an interesting option. I think he's a good tournament option there on FanDuel, and I think he's a fine option if he's cheap on multiple pitcher sites.
Yep, I definitely agree there. I like him as an SP2. He is sitting at 15.6. He's a really good guy in cash to pair with Sale over on Fantasy Draft. Love that call. He was a guy that I was going to mention. Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman has found his bat, and he is hitting everything right now. What's your thoughts on him here?
Fine playing him in cash games, I think, if he's still cheap and, if you're playing on a site where he's not priced up due to the recent hot streak, and fine using him as a one-off in tournament. The problem overall is the Braves lineup is just brutal. I mean, it's just a brutal lineup, so it's not a situation where we can kind of load up the guys around him to get to stack them up. So fine as a one-off, fine if he's cheap on a specific site.
Mets heading to Coors Field to take on the Rockies. We got Jonathan Gray against Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey against the Rockies at Coors Field. Do you want anything to do with him here?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to ask. Yeah, I had to ask.
That's nice. Nice of you.
Okay,
That's
well,
very nice of you.
I tend to agree. I don't take pictures at Coors Field, and Harvey hasn't really showed us anything this year. So let's talk bats. All of them. Moving on, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's pretty simple at this point, folks. Coors Field, get as much exposure as you can, obviously.
Yeah, look for where they're cheap. Take your shots with them where they're cheap. Look for the home run guys. Duda, Granderson, Conforto, and then on the other side, Arenado, Cargo. Look where they're cheap, and target the home run fly ball guys that can hit it. And then target guys like Blackman, Para, these guys in cash games because they're going to get hits and likely probably going to get 5 at bats here.
Yeah, and like you said, try to find some cheapies. And I know one guy that's pretty cheap all around the industry doesn't get a great lineup spot, Ben Paulson. So just keep an eye out for him. See if he's in that lineup. That's a way to kind of get cheap exposure.
Yeah, and I'm not going to make him one of my fantasy draft plays. I could break the rules here and go $100 over what I like to do, but Conforto is only 8,100 on fantasy draft, right over that value mark. Really, really solid price tag, and Blackman's only 8,700. Yeah. Those guys are probably guys you're going to want to play in your cash games on fantasy draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Should be locks over there.
San Francisco at Chase Field taking on the Diamondbacks. Samardzija starting to turn around this season, but Shelby Miller – we said it a ton last year that this guy was going to regress, and it finally happened. Shelby Miller is not worth the price of admission, folks.
No, I mean, the admission could be free, and he's still not worth it. So stay the hell away from him. Definitely don't play him, and you're going to want to target some Giants bats. I think a really good tournament stack, probably one of my favorites. Chase Field is a super elite hitting environment, and they have the guys that can do damage. Posey, I like Span at the top in cash games. Belt, probably one of my favorite tournament, individual tournament plays. Pence gets a pretty poor lineup spot, usually hits 5th or 6th, so good tournament option there. Crawford, I know you always talk about Crawford. You like him a lot. Definitely in play. So you're going to want some exposure to some Giants bats. And, the top 7 guys in this lineup all have a lot of upside. So good team to attack here.
Yep. The last play here of my fantasy draft plays for cash games comes out of this game. It's Joe Panic. He's under 8K over on fantasy draft. Great cash game option, batting the 2-hole. They're on the road, likely to get 5 at-bats here against Arizona, who, even if I remember correctly, they can't even go really left-handed heavy in the bullpen. So Panic should face a lot of righties here. Probably only going to get 2 or 3 at bats against Shelby Miller. Don't expect him to hang on along. And the thing that you mentioned, like, you get all these Giants bats at a discount to the Coors bats, and it's it's not Coors Field, but Chase is not a pushover ballpark. It's probably top 3 for hitters.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good way to differentiate yourself in tournaments. A good way to pick up some potentially cheap bats in an elite spot.
Samardzija, he's coming off of 3 really solid games. You can even say really 4 quality starts. What's your thoughts on him here? It's Chase Field. This total's at 9. Is he a guy you might want to look at?
I like him in tournaments a hell of a lot, to be honest. Going to Chase Field, a lot of people will get off of him, but he has pitched really well in basically 4 straight starts, 5 out of 6. In Coors Field to pitch well, I believe, right? Or no, that was at home. So yeah, don't listen to that. But people will get off of him because Chase Field is obviously a really good hitting environment. But he has been super sharp. Diamondbacks lineup, they're really hit or miss. I mean, it seems like they either do damage or get completely shut down. So I'm fine taking a shot on him in tournaments. I like to play a lot in tournaments.
Yeah, his ERA is 3.17 to start the year. His xFIP's 3.33. So he's been pitching pretty much right around what his numbers are suggesting. Is swinging strike rates over 10.5. The thing that I love about him here in this matchup is he's a ground ball guy, and he's only given up a 21% hard contact rate this year. So a ground ball guy with the contact rate like that, we could see some, double plays to get him out of some innings here. We can see him go a little deeper. I like him in tournaments a lot. I'm with you. I feel like people are going to jump off him, and I'm hoping that David Peralta is still out of the lineup, and that really helps him a lot.
Yeah, he's probably my favorite tournament option in terms of pitchers. I mean, the strikeouts are coming back. A guy that historically has had a high strikeout rate, kind of went away from that last year to start the season a little bit low, but 7 strikeouts, 9 strikeouts in his last 3. And then in 4 out of 6 games, he's gone at least 7 2/3 innings. That's impressive stuff. So he's working deep into games and picking up the strikeouts, a lethal combination for DFS.
I do agree there. Is there any bats that you want to take against him here? For Arizona, the one name that kind of stands out for me is Lamb. If Peralta's in, I would probably take a shot on him. But those are really the only 2 guys. Goldschmidt's Goldschmidt. If you can, if you want to play him at low ownership, this is probably a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't really have much to add on to the guys you mentioned there, but just overall, not a ton of interest. If you want to take a shot on a super low-owned guy in a hitting environment, fine with that. But I just don't see a ton of upside in doing that.
Yeah, and even if Peralta plays, how healthy is he? He got sent back to, early to Arizona to get that, forearm looked at. So even if he plays, how healthy is he? So I would tread very lightly if he's in the lineup. Angels take it on Seattle at Safeco. Nathan Carnes against Nick Tropiano. I want nothing to do with Carnes. I rolled him out in a couple spots, a couple times this year, and he just hasn't pitched as well as I thought he was going to. And then he came out against Houston and shut him down. So he's so frustrating for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. He's had some good starts this season. He's had some bad starts. If you were on him when he had his good starts, maybe you'd have a different take, So it's tough. I mean, the pitching, I think he is an interesting play for a couple of reasons. It's a super friendly pitching environment here at Safeco Field. He's facing a lineup where if you navigate around the good guy, if you navigate around a couple guys, Pujols, Trout, you should have some success. The Angels lineup is super, super weak outside of those guys. So I think he's somewhat interesting. He's flashed some strikeout upside as well, but more so for tournaments opposed to cash games. I don't think there's many bats I want to take against him either. So an interesting play there in Carnes.
I will probably take some shots on Fantasy Draft and DraftKings, 2 pitcher sites. FanDuel, I feel like there's other tournament options that I like a little bit more than what I like out of Carnes, but I'll take some shots on 2 pitcher sites. What's your thoughts on Tropiano here? He's really cheap on FanDuel. Gets a matchup here, at Safeco, which you mentioned is a good ballpark.
I think he's interesting in tournaments. I mean, you look at the price; it really hasn't come up much. He's been serviceable all season long, coming off a 10 strikeout game. The one drawback here is he has not pitched into the sixth inning. Or he's pitched into it. He's pitched 5 2/3 basically is the most he's pitched all season long. So that's a pretty decent drawback. But if you're playing him, he's at 6.4K. You're hoping he goes the 5 innings. You're hoping he strikes out 6 to 7 batters and picks up the win, and that will be more than enough. And if you're playing him, you'll be able to stack up some elite offenses, and there's quite a few in really good spots tonight. So I think he's a very adequate tournament option tonight, especially when you look at the slate. I mean, the one guy obviously that stands out on the slate is Chris Sale, but after him, I mean, there's a lot of ho-hum options. There's nothing that really stands out. So, the hope is with him, he goes out, has an adequate outing. Sale doesn't go bonkers, and, you're able to stack up some of these good offenses. So I like him a lot in tournaments, actually.
Yeah, he's a guy, even dating back to last year, he has a really high strikeout rate against lefties, 27% in 35 innings. Smaller sample size. We've seen him struggle against lefties, so I feel like if you play him, that's fine, but I feel like you're going to want to target some Seattle bats against him as well. Guys like Cano and Seager, Aoki if he's in the leadoff spot, Seth Smith. These guys that are cheap that you can get exposure to this offense and, not have to pay a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there.
Is there anybody that you want to target here for the Angels?
I mean, Trout in tournaments as a one-off option, Pujols to a much lesser degree, I guess, in tournaments, but nothing to get super excited about here, to be honest with you.
Yeah, not a lot to get excited with about this offense. So I feel like that's why Carnes is probably going to disappoint me again. St. Louis
set the expectations low.
I just did.
A wise man once told me, I'm not a quote person, but this is probably like one of my favorite quotes I've ever heard. And it applies perfectly to DFS. Expect nothing and you'll never be disappointed.
Well, I'm going to expect absolutely nothing with Carnes then. Sounds good. I love that quote.
Then he can't disappoint you, so it's a win-win.
St. Louis heading over to Los Angeles to take on the Dodgers. Michael Wacha against Ross Stripling. What's your thoughts here on Wacha against the Dodgers offense, who's been pretty cold to start the season? They're 25th WOBA at 297, and their WRC plus is under 85 to start the year.
Yeah, I mean, as much as like Carnes frustrates you, Wacha frustrates me. I'll tell you what. I don't have much interest in him, to be honest with you, on the road here in Los Angeles. If this game was played in St. Louis, I might have a little more interest. He just doesn't do enough for me, and I'm just off him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, some fair points. I still think he's a guy that's a tournament upset, tournament play. He can average a strikeout per inning. So if he throws you 6 innings and strikes out 6 or 7, picks up the win and kind of limits the earned runs, he could be a guy if Sale doesn't go crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know how much exposure I'm going to have to him. I don't hate the play. Just because, like you're saying, we have Sale and then we have everybody else on the slate. So it's a tough slate. Stripling, he's not a guy that I want to target here.
No, not much upside, to be honest. Strikeouts are typically pretty moderate for him. I mean, he has struck out 5, 6, and 6 in his last 3, but 2 of those games were against San Diego. So you can take that with a little bit less than a grain of salt. So I'm off him, and just another guy. It doesn't offer a ton of upside. If I'm going to play him, I'd just rather go cheaper and full out punt the position and stack up some really elite offenses. So neither pitcher here is overly exciting. And then honestly, on the other side of things, I mean, I'm not overly excited to target any batters from this game either. I mean, maybe a couple Cardinals guys, some cheapies potentially. Matt Holliday's cheap in a few spots, so maybe some interest in him. Piscotty's a guy I like a lot in tournaments. He's just a super hard contact guy. I mean, he gets a lot of hard contact, a ton of upside. I think they said he was like the minor league player of the year last year, so a very promising player. So Holliday as a potential cash game play where he's cheap, Piscotty in tournaments. Outside of that, just not a ton of interest in bats here.
Yeah, I like Grichuk. He's kind of a reverse splits guy, hits right-handed pitching really well, struggles against lefties. So I don't mind him on the top of the other 2 guys you said. Brandon Moss, if he's in the lineup and he's in the 4 or 5 spot, he's always a guy that has upside, so I don't mind him as well in tournaments. Not a guy you want to play in cash games. Any Dodgers that you want to take here against Wacha?
I mean, not really. Maybe in tournaments like a Corey Seager, Adrian Gonzalez. I mean, it would be a really low-owned tournament option. Can't really get excited about many Dodgers bats here.
Yeah, it's not a morning grind, though, if I don't talk about Jock Peterson being a tournament play. So
Jock Jams, baby.
Yes, every time he hits a home run, you can expect that hashtag Jock Jams on Twitter by me. I talked about it the other day. He's one of 2 people that, outside of Griffey, that I have a jersey for that's not a Red Sox player. So,
man, I'll tell you what, though, that run he was on last season, when I'm all done and gone with DFS, I will tell you what, man, I will never forget that run he was on last season. That was so incredible. Then he just got so ice cold to finish out the season.
Never forget how much money he made me on that run.
Yeah.
2 qualifier seats. Yeah, I swear I played him every night. And it took people like a week to start playing him, and by that time, I was good.
Yeah, and it's like he got so ice cold though to start the season. Or to end the season, he was so locked into that leadoff spot. It was like home run, home run, home run. Then like he literally couldn't hit a pitch to end the year.
All right, that pretty much wraps it up here for the 14-game slate. Mike, let's play some home run derby. I missed this yesterday. I was at the beach. I had a lot of fun, but I missed my home run derby, so I'll let you lead it off here.
All right, I am going to start with Josh Donaldson.
I had him written down. I figured you were going to go with him.
Yeah, I'm not going contrarian today. That's it.
Well, if you're not going contrarian, I'm going Harper.
All right, you can take that. I am going to follow up that Harper pick with Jose Bautista.
Joey Bats expecting 2 home runs from Toronto. I think you're hedging yourself here.
You'll see. I got to.
I'm gonna go with Hosmer. I'm gonna stick with my Royals call here. I think they're gonna mash Tehran. I like Hosmer a lot.
All right, you did not ruin my plan. Thank God. E5.
I was already starting to write down E.
Back to back. It's going to happen all in one inning too.
All right. The last one I'm going to go Jose Abreu. I really like the righties here. Yeah. When Cervinho struggles, we've seen 43 innings from this guy, and he has a 25.6% home run to fly ball ratio to righties. So take some right-handed bats for Chicago and hope for some home runs. If you had to pick one pitcher that's not Chris Sale to win at the end of the day, who would it be?
Edison Volquez.
All right. Yeah, I love that call. Man, you took my guy.
I went super chalk with the home runs. I had to go slightly contrarian with the pitcher win here.
Man, that makes it tough for me. I'm going to go Odorizzi. I like him here in this matchup. I feel like he's a guy that I like a lot.
Yeah, I like that.
Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Really good slate for all sorts of formats. Obviously, if you're a tournament guy, a lot of ways you can differentiate yourself from Coors Field. Like I said, I project. I don't know if I can necessarily say project, but my bold call is the Toronto-Texas game to be 5 runs higher than the Coors Field game.
And you took all 3 of your guys in the home run derby from that game, all from the same team, all batting back to back to back.
Standing by it. Have to stand by my point.
All right, my friend. It sounds good. Well, enjoy your weekend. We'll be back with the Morning Grind podcast on Monday. If you haven't gone over to fantasydraft.com, make sure you check them out. Like I said, use promo code GRINDERS. That way you guys get the incentives package for a year for free. Get a lot of great content here on Roto Grinders for Fantasy Draft. And check out their $15,000 home run. I'm definitely going to have my entries into that thing. If I don't take it down, I hope one of you guys take it down. I hope one of you guys take down something. If you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter, especially about the San Diego game once we find out a pitcher. And we'll be back on Monday. Enjoy your Friday the 13th, and we'll see you then.